Welcome to the Chain Out Podcast with your hosts, Jeremy and Daryl.
Daryl, I always welcome everyone to the Chain Out Podcast, but I just realized that really our digital voice is doing that. But hey, in case people don't know, I'm Jeremy. That guy sitting over there is Daryl. How is everybody doing?
You know what? I have thought about that before. But
we just got so used to it because there was a time when we didn't have that AI voice to introduce ourselves.
exactly. And it sounds so much sweeter coming out of your voice or out of your mouth than his anyway. So how are you doing? Here we go. Episode 54.
Yeah, season 2, episode 54, except I feel really odd today because for what has it been? Has it been like 4 or 5 episodes we've been in the same room at the same time?
More than that, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. And I like that new normal. This is a little bit odd for me, but you
Like
had
a throwback.
you'd said, Jeremy, you sound a little sick. Stay as far away from me as possible. Was that how it was? That's how it felt, at least.
I think you were the nice, kind friend that said, hey, I've been a little bit sick since we came back from Cold Garden. Do you want me to come over? So I immediately said, nope, stay away. I don't want to get sick. That's the worst thing. I don't like getting sick. So, what's another week apart?
Well, there you go. And you know what I thought about, Daryl, was I was thinking I wanted to do something old school. Kristen would have loved it. Was when we had the camera off, you would have seen me like I was. But I have a acoustic guitar, and because you're a big Friends fan, I was going to have it in hand and get ready to sing Smelly Cat for you. Just
I don't think you're sounding that bad.
No, it's better than that.
Yeah, you sound like you said. I think you're getting over it. It's been a week since we came back from Cold Garden, so hopefully the worst of it is behind you.
Yeah, and we always want to get to the interview now quite quickly, but we have a few things to hit, and one of those things is Cold Garden, and it's like I'm still, I think, even though I have a little bit of a cold, I'm still on a high from that episode. I had so much fun down there.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was, it was probably a bit more. Like, I enjoyed it for a different reason than you did, probably. Like, I enjoyed doing an on-site location podcast. I enjoyed just the atmosphere. I enjoyed getting to see new people in person. Like, we've interviewed Thomas German. He came down and said hi. We've had Joe on the podcast before. We've met Joe out at Falcons Flight and other events like that. But to get down there and see people and actually interact with them on a one-on-one type of capacity was really great. For me, we had some technical issues. You probably saw me at my worst when I was frantically running around trying to figure out how to get the camera set up and why it wouldn't stay on. And then we had some microphone issues. If you went back and listened, or if you did watch, for a lot of people watching live, we had a few audio issues. You could either hear people or you couldn't. But we got there in the end. We kind of made it work. And now I know the next time that it happens, and there will be a next time, I know all the little idiosyncrasies that involve taking a whole podcast studio, putting it in a tote, taking it 300 miles away or however far Calgary is away, and setting it all up in another place.
Yeah, and I think you did an awesome job with that because it was the first time and we didn't know what to expect. Mm-hmm. And it was crazy when you think about it that it was like one little adapter was probably what had us in a bit of a tizzy along with the camera like that. But I want everyone to know that you and we don't just do this episode. We actually listen back to it and we analyze the content and everything else. So we do know that it was tough to listen if you were listening live or after the fact. And we appreciate everybody for doing that. And as you said, Daryl, it's going to be even better the next time. You mentioned a couple of the guests that were there. We had Joe Henderson. We had Blake Belding. We had Ryan Bonner of Local Disc Golf. We had Alex Penny. So that was fantastic. All great Calgarians. It's like we were saying, when it comes to sports, except for disc golf, that's when there's a rivalry. When it comes to disc golf, man, the Calgary people are just as great as the Edmonton people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And because we were mentioning Blake, we should thank him again for allowing us to be at Cold Garden and to do that episode from there. Because it was, for our first live on location, could you have asked for a better atmosphere, like on a Wednesday night when it was snowing?
I know. That was one thing that surprised me. And, we had said, we didn't know it was going to be this busy. And he was like, no, this is about average. This is what we expect to get on a Wednesday. And that place was, it wasn't packed. There was a few empty spots, but it was definitely a lot more fuller than I thought.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was full. And part of that was our listeners. So some of our listeners who came out too, I want to shout them out as thanks to Luke and
Absolutely.
Heather. They came down for a beer. Brody was out as well. And like you said, Thomas German came down too.
Yeah.
So they got a chance. Luckily, we had so many prizes too. Everyone was so gracious with giving us things, and we got to give it all away. And we have some stuff to still go back to some of our listeners who were listening that we're going to get out to them as well.
We have it. I have it all here. I'm separating it into piles. We haven't forgot about it.
And now, Daryl, that's about the Cool Garden. I know we want to get to our interview with Gabe.
Yeah.
But we had a couple more things to hit on, and I want you to tell everybody about our next piece of big news because you were a big important piece of making it happen. So
yeah. So if you follow us on our social media, if you do follow us on
if you don't, what's your problem, man?
If you do follow us on Instagram, you will have seen that we had a big announcement that we teased last weekend, and we finally got to announce it this yesterday. I think it was that we announced it, is that Chain Out Podcast is going to be sponsored for the 2025 season, and we're so happy to be wearing Cardinal Disc Golf apparel. Yeah, Cardinal Disc Golf is going to be sponsoring Chain Out Podcast 2025. Yeah, they put out the team applications. I wrote it out. You know, words are not my best strong point, Jeremy. Technical things are, but I filled out the application. I did my best. I got out the dictionary and the thesaurus, and I used all the big words I knew. Something worked, and we got approved, and we are so happy to be sponsored by Cardinal next year.
Yes, and just so I thought you might have noticed, maybe sporting a little Cardinal already myself here.
I know, I see that. I think that probably what tipped him over the edge, the fact that we already have we have one Cardinal piece of jersey. And yeah, I mean, that's a pretty sharp jersey. Where can you get one like that, Jeremy? Or whose is that?
Well, this one's Miguel Alvarado's. One of our... Oh, you wanted me to say it, didn't you? You were just getting me to...
I was feeding you the line.
Yeah, so this is Miguel's jersey, which is a fantastic one. It's got the Mexican colors to it and that. And all you have to do is spend about, 3 minutes with Miguel, and after that, he'll know your size. He'll have one out of the trunk of his vehicle.
He's got one right there for you.
Ready to take your money for it. He takes all forms of payment. I think he even takes Square. I don't know, right? So.
Yeah, I can't wait. Obviously, they look sharp. They feel. I imagine they feel good. I don't doubt for a second that they're a great looking jersey, a great feeling jersey, and we're so happy. And we can't wait to get. We've already put our orders in. We're going to be getting our jerseys and our apparel, our hoodies and hats and everything else that we're going to get. So we'll definitely be showing it off on the podcast in the future.
That's right. And we'll get a chance too to get some more guests as well, whether they're Cardinal guests that maybe we didn't have access to or hadn't been on our radar. We'll have the owner Kevin as well, and Lane. We'll probably get a chance to get them on too.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Now we got to get to that interview, but I got one more piece of big news to say, and I don't know if everyone knows it yet. Not only did we have that live Cold Garden episode, not only did we get a new sponsor for 2025 in Cardinal Disc Golf, but there was the Edmonton Disc Golf Association annual general meeting. The AGM, I think is what you need to say.
The AGM, yeah.
So that happened, and that was at another brewery at Sea Change. And when we were there was a lot of positions that were coming up for people to join the board for next year.
Yeah.
And I just want to say congratulations, my friend.
I can do a bit of a cutaway because I do have a little bit of a thing lined up. You were going to announce that we have a new member at large communications.
That's right.
If you give me 1 second.
All right. Drum roll. Is that what I'm
it's me.
Oh, man. I didn't even see that coming. I thought maybe you had a picture of yourself. I didn't realize you were just going to a
just
picture
gonna cut
of yourself.
to me. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, congratulations, Daryl. That's awesome. How do you feel about that?
I just thought, I want to get more involved. I want to get more involved with Edgar. There's a position available, communications. That's kind of in my wheelhouse, the things that I enjoy doing. Sure. I mean, how hard can it be? And then Tim did the handover saying, thank you to everybody. Thank you to Brock. Thank you to everybody. But a big thank you to Vicky, who's vacating the communications position because she helped him out so much this year. And she does so many great things that I'm thinking, this is the position that I'm stepping into. Like, what have I got myself in for? But
You got some big news.
I've had a sit down with Vicky and with Brock, and we discussed everything that Vicky did, and she has everything set up so well. She has everything templated out and organized, probably a little bit more than it was in the past. So it looks like it's going to be an easy handover. And Brock is the new president of Edgar, for people that didn't know. Tim stepped down. So yeah, we and Brock kind of let me know his thoughts and outline and where he wants the communications position to go. So I'm really excited. Stay tuned.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Just so you know,
I'm very happy for you.
Thank you. The first newsletter will be my first thing that I do as part of my communications position.
There you go.
So we can double check it for spelling mistakes, Jeremy.
I love it. And last thing we're going to tell you here is make sure to stick around after the episode. We've got our Patreon is free right now. We got a link to our Around the Basket episode that we'll be doing. It'll be our 3rd episode. It's, like I said, it's free right now. And we're going to have Tim Plamondon on tonight, speaking of the previous president. And we're going to have a lot of fun things to chat about, including a special giveaway for our Patreon listeners.
Yes.
So, Daryl, here goes. Tonight's guest is one of our great local MPO players. He's been a PDGA member since 2021, but has been playing much longer than that. He helps with clinics, he gives disc golf lessons, and puts on tournaments to raise money for youth initiatives. He was Chainout's first and only guest host to date, and overall is just an amazing human being. Let's welcome Gabe Piska to the show.
Oh, let me bring you out of the
the
green room.
Well, maybe we'll get him here, hey?
He should be coming out. Removed from green room. Come on. What's happening, Jeremy? Did he leave?
Hello?
No.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but we can't see you.
Can't see me.
Don't worry, Gabe. This is Daryl's specialty. We know that. He'll get this one figured out for sure. Toggle a few buttons and...
Yeah.
What other magic do you do, Daryl, when we're working on this? Is there
pixie dust a lot of things I'm doing or something? Can I get you to call? Hang on 1 second, Gabe. I'm just going to put you back in the green room.
And I'll just sit here and look pretty for a moment. Oh, actually, our listeners who are listening won't be able to see that, though. I'm looking pretty, just so anybody who is listening on the audio side of things, that's what's happening right now.
Isn't it funny how you do these things we just had him on. We had all this set up.
Yeah, it was working great a second ago.
Right. Okay, keep talking, Jeremy.
All right. Well, I will keep talking. What I'll do is I'm going to just talk to Gabe, and when you get him up here, if we lose him and he comes back, that's okay. But I'd say, Gabe, you're looking great. That's the first thing I'd like to tell you tonight.
Thank you. I mean, I'm glad you guys mentioned Daryl joining the board. I made sure that I had a sea change drink with me tonight to, conveniently bring it up if you guys didn't, that I got this at the AGM where Daryl joined the board. Very important things.
You know what, Gabe?
And talk about an AGM.
I'm going to disconnect you. Can you call back?
I'm thinking he must be able to.
I think we lost him anyway. There you go. Try that again. Things that happen on live podcasts, Jeremy.
Well, and we had that conversation with some people too. They were asking about doing a podcast and going live versus pre-recorded and what the different things were. And it was like, well, you pre-record, it probably takes you twice as long, I think, because you record and you stop and you do all these things and you edit. When you go live, it's only as long as you hit start and you hit end, but you got to deal with anything that happens in between, right?
Yeah. You got to deal with these things that might happen, and he's not calling back yet. So I don't know. We'll give him a few more minutes here, but yeah.
Like and talk about Gabe there. As we said, he was like our first guest host that we had on the show, and he was already planning that for this episode. And the fact that he's like, I've got my sea change beer in hand, and I was all ready. If you weren't going to bring it up, Daryl, I was going to throw some praise your way.
Well, that is the funny thing, because that was our first junior episode that we did. And
yeah,
both Gabe and I, when we were talking about it, we were like, well, normally we kind of have a drink on the podcast. It's kind of like our thing, right? But we're going to be interviewing like 10 and 12-year-olds. So it's probably not a good idea that we start having a drink while these kids are around. So we actually didn't drink on that episode. I had water.
Yeah, and that episode goes way back to, I want to say it was June, because I was heading to managers meetings that weekend.
Right.
And I remember I actually had the ability to listen to it live. I was sitting at the managers meetings. There was a cornhole tournament going on.
Goodness. Hang on one second.
And I wasn't
I've got something crazy going on here.
Do you want me to still chat though?
No, talk to Gabe. I'll fix the background out.
Yeah, we were
I
just
want to
talking
be really
Gabe.
big.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Keep
So
going.
Gabe, I was just saying that when you were on the first time there, I can remember there was a little bit of FOMO, but I was enjoying it so much because I was actually for one time able to listen to our podcast as a true listener and not be kind of listening to my own voice. So I was at managers meetings. There's a cornhole tournament going on, and as that cornhole tournament's going on, I'm snuck off to the side with my phone to watch our podcast happening. And then it'd be like, Jeremy, it's your turn to throw. I'm like, okay, but Kai's gonna say something right now. He's gonna trash talk somebody.
I know you were truly in the dark on that one. You had no clue it was coming.
No, exactly. So let's get back to it. Welcome. We were saying how well of a guest you were prepared. You had your beer in hand. You were ready to bring up Daryl's most recent award, or what would you call it? Is it award?
Position.
What is
title?
it, Daryl?
Appointment?
Yeah, your recent title. Yeah, there you
Yeah.
go. But yeah, so what's been going on since the last time we see you? You been keeping busy? Are you still playing disc golf in this weather, or what?
I'll be honest, I'm a little bit of a fair weather golfer. As soon as there's more than, 0 snow on the ground, it really makes me question playing disc golf at all. So typically I don't play a whole lot through the winter. I try to join putting leagues, and then with the coaching clinics that I do in February, March, we also have some free throw sessions with those that helps kind of get that itch to just chuck a disc out. And then by that point, snow's basically gone.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah, so you're not like me or Daryl, where you got a U-disc streak going and you got to do everything you can to keep it. You're okay to let that pass?
Yeah, even through the summer, I find that my U-disc streak often dies, not from lack of playing, but because I'm really bad at tracking all of my rounds, especially if I don't get out to a league round, which uses U-disc anyways. If I don't get
Right.
out for a league round that week and I'm just playing a casual round or two, I can be
Right.
really bad for remembering to score it. And so my U-disc streak is usually pretty low on the best of times. So by the time winter comes, it's fine to go away.
So when you go out for casual rounds, do you just not, like, it's not a thing that you track your round, you just go out and throw? Do you throw 2 or 3 discs on every hole? Like, is it more of a practice round for you? Because I know when me and Jeremy ever go out, it's always like, okay, who's keeping score? I'll keep score. You keep score. Like, that's the first thing we do before we've even warmed up, basically.
Yeah, no, these days I don't often keep score in casual rounds. If I'm just going out to play and have a good time, I will throw a couple of shots off the tee. Usually by like hole 9 or hole 10, I'll kind of look at how I feel my round is going. And I can usually think back to what all my first shots were. And then if I'm feeling like I'm having a half decent round, or if I'm playing against somebody, especially if I'm going out with my brother, I realize partway through that I think we're actually very close in score that round, then we'll often start up a scorecard. But
Right.
probably only about 60% of my casual rounds actually get a scorecard for them. The other 40%, I go out, I throw 2 or 3 shots on a bunch of them, see what the score is later.
Right.
I
Well,
wish
that's
I
all right.
could be
And
that
you can-
casual.
Yeah, we'll get there, Daryl. It takes a few years to get there. But I was going to say, Gabe, was that you mentioned Tristan, and I want to say this interview's kind of been a long time coming. We tried to get you on at Tundra Toss, and it was one of those things where we just realized how popular of a person you are, because every time we try to start up the interview, someone wanted to come over and chat with you. So I think we're at that point where Tristan can finally stop holding that over your head, that he's been on the podcast and you haven't had your interview yet. So we're excited about that.
Yeah, it's okay. I just keep reminding him that he got second in league, and I didn't.
That is always probably a good one to just put out there for almost any challenge that he
Yeah.
throws in your face.
At least for
That's
this
awesome.
year. By the time next summer comes, we'll see where we go. Because I like to think that I have him pretty consistently, but realistically, I have him by maybe a stroke around. It can go either way. So
Nice. Well, why don't we get to kind of how things started? Because I'm pretty sure you guys didn't start at the same time. But before we get into that, I've got to give you an origin story. And you know what it's all about. So here it goes. Maybe when you were, and this one's actually maybe a little holiday themed. Maybe when you were younger, your family planned a winter trip to France. In all the hustle and bustle of getting out the door, you were accidentally left behind, Gabe. But once that initial fear passed, you got excited about the prospect of having the house to yourself. You explored it and found your dad's coveted disc golf basket and discs. You started playing with them in the house, outside the house, on the roof, whatever crazy setup you could think of. You got so good and accurate that when a couple of bumbling would-be thieves tried to break into the house, you deftly knocked them out with a couple of well-placed disc throws. Maybe that's not quite how you got into disc golf, Gabe, but why don't you tell us how it really happened?
yeah, so I started playing in 2015, I believe it was, either 2014 or 2015. So long before the 2021 that PDGA says. And I got into it was actually my youth pastor at the time. And he basically used disc golf as a way to chat with and connect with different youth at the church I was at. And so it started as, hey, why don't you come play disc golf? And at first it was, 6 or 7 of us. And it was, classic mob golf. There were 7 or 8 teenagers and this one guy trying to push us in the right direction at the very least. And slowly some of the other people decided they didn't like disc golf as much. And so it ended up just being me and him and one of our other buddies that would go and play all the time. So that's how I first got into it. I was actually the first one in my family. I then slowly convinced my dad and then very slowly convinced my brother. It took him many years to catch on board with us. But even after that guy who got me into it moved away, I still kept playing. Still one of my fondest memories was actually my first ace happened with that guy who got me into disc golf.
Wow.
We were playing out at Jubilee Park out in Spruce Grove. That's where I grew up. That's where I played 99% of my rounds for the first 4 years. And so we were walking from hole 9 back to hole 1. It's a little 9-hole course. And we played 9 holes, and 9 holes just isn't enough disc golf. You have to play 18.
No.
So we're walking from hole 9 to hole 1. As we were walking over, we're talking about we're all starting to throw a little bit farther, and I think we can actually reach some of these baskets. Like there's like an actual chance that one of us can ace at this point. Up until then, we're all coming up 30, 50 feet short on everything, so ace is out of the question. But now I think we can actually do this. And then we walk over to hole 1 and throw a laser shot straight into the chains. Otherwise, I would have been past the basket at that point. But it was just such a cool thing of this guy who got me into it. I got my first ace playing with him. And so that's how I got into it back in either 2014, end of 2014 or beginning of 2015 kind of thing.
Well, you kind of touched on it there. You said that you started in 2014, 2015, but not 2021 as the PDGA says. So what took you so long to, kind of get registered as a member? Was it just that feeling that you had of just going out for fun, and it was more just playing with your buddies at that point?
A little bit of that. Part of it was back then you could play a couple of tournaments without needing a PDJ membership.
Okay.
And I was probably only playing like one a year. I basically played River City Cup and that was it. Partly because, I was 19, 20 and was broke and wasn't really traveling anywhere. Another huge piece of it was that I didn't play a whole lot of tournaments until 2021 because up until that point, most of my jobs were actually working in churches. And so I worked every Sunday.
Right.
It makes it really tough to play a tournament if you work every single Sunday. So yeah, it wasn't until 2021 that I got a PDGA number. Forever one of my biggest regrets in disc golf is not getting a PDGA number sooner. I could have had such a low number if I got one in even like 2017.
Yeah.
It would have been so good.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, you could have been in the 5 digits, maybe even, I don't know about the 4 digits, but the 5 digits for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Instead, I didn't get it till even like partway into the COVID boom was when
Yeah.
I finally got a PDJ number. Because at that point, I was playing more tournaments, and that was when PDJ started to put in more rules around what tiers of tournaments needed a PDGA number at them. And so it then started to become, well, River City Cup was around, and Edmonton Open might have been around in 2021, if not the next year. And I was playing a couple at that point, and I needed a PDJ number to play in these events. So it was finally time.
I'm sure Jeremy's
Yeah.
done his research, but does your number start with a 1 or a 2?
Jeremy, what's the answer?
N-
It
n-
Do you
starts
know?
with a 1. It still
Oh,
starts
okay.
with a 1.
All right. At
Yeah.
least it's with a 1.
Yeah, it wasn't right until kind of once things got over 200, if I remember right, is that as things started to grow quite quickly, they started getting closer to 250, and that's when it really, really ramped up as people were wanting to get right to there. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I was gonna say, and when you were saying you weren't playing on Sundays, that makes sense. But I thought maybe you were gonna get to that point where your Saturday and your Friday were gonna be so amazing that you could just take the +4s on Sunday and still walk away with a position on the podium. But that'd be a pretty tall feat there.
Yeah.
You had mentioned it there, and I think this is an easy one for Gabe, because a lot of
Yeah.
times when someone's been playing a long time, we'll ask them, do you remember the first sanctioned event you were in? But obviously, it would have been River City Cup. But one of the
Mhm.
things I noticed when I looked at that was your first, sanctioned event. You were playing MA1 at the time, and when I looked, it looks like you almost won that event. Is that right?
Yeah. So I'll tell you two little things. So my first actual tournament I ever played before I had a PDJ number was River City Cup. But one of the important things for you to know here is that it was River City Cup, and it started the day after my grade 12 grad. Um, my grade 12 grad was Friday night, and I remember all of my friends talking about how they were going out and partying and doing whatever. And I went, no, guys, I got to go home and sleep. I got a disc golf tournament at 8 a.m. tomorrow. You guys can go celebrate grad all you want. I got to go get some rest. Um, so that was my first tournament I ever actually played, was 2016 River City Cup. But the first one that is on my PJ number would have been also the last MA1 tournament I ever played as well. And it was, River City Cup. I played, it was ended up being me and Michael Stoddard, who was a guy that was big in Edmonton for a long time, big piece of the community until he moved away a couple years ago. And I'm forever a little cheesed about that one. We were finishing up on hole 7 at Rundle Park, which is our last hole. And
Yeah.
if you played Rundle Park, you know it's this long par 4. And I walked up to that hole. We were tied at that point, and I'd played all 3 rounds with Michael. And so I knew if I birdie this, I win. I played with him.
Right.
I know that he doesn't have the distance to birdie it, or he just didn't want to push it. He'd never even tried to birdie it. So I knew if I birdie this hole, I win. And I threw just the greatest drive. It was so good. It had tons of distance on it. And I realized partway through the flight that there were some guys that had finished up their round and were sitting by the basket on hole 10, and they'd left their carts out in the fairway of hole 7. And so we're yelling for these guys, yelling at them to move their cart. And so instead of my disc landing in the fairway quite a bit up there, it kicks off a guy's cart straight right
No.
into the trees. And I'm basically pitching out my second shot and going up for a par. So we ended up pushing, went to a playoff, and he beat me on hole 1 because I took a gamble that he wasn't going to birdie it. He went first even, and I saw his drive go, and I'm like, he's like 50 feet. What I didn't see is that he got a huge roll and got down to 15 feet.
Uh-huh.
So, but either way, that was my last MA1 tournament. I took second place, but the whole weekend, that was, I think, some of the worst rounds I'd ever had all year at Rundle. And so I walked away from it going, if this is the worst golf I've played all year and I got into a playoff for first, maybe this isn't the right division for me to be playing at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome.
And
That's a great story.
I played one other MA1 tournament that year as well. It was out at Eagles Landing, and I also came in second at that one against Lee Dandy, who now also plays pro. And walking up at the end of that round, he was then giving me crap, saying that he's moving up to pro after this event, and I better also move up to pro because he beat me by, I think, 1 or 2 strokes. And then I had, I think, 6 or 7 strokes on the guy in third place. And so it was the two of us very much at the top, and then the rest of MA1. So those were my 2 MA1 tournaments that year. Came in second at both of them, but still decided it was time to move on.
Wow.
Nice. That's awesome. And you kind of are getting there even by saying Eagles Landing. You're leading me to where I wanted to go with this, is that we had Wally on the show, we had Chad on the show. They gave us an idea of what it was like playing disc golf in Edmonton long before the COVID boom. But what was it like being a kid at that time? And tell us a little bit about the courses that were even around, because Eagles Landing, to me, I'm not familiar with it. I don't even know that course.
Yeah, Eagles Landing actually is still around. It just doesn't get a whole lot of love. It's a little too far outside of the city for a course that's like a solid 6 out of 10. But early on in Edmonton, it was really small. Nothing like what it is now. You'd show up to league night and there'd be like 40 guys, maybe. Everyone meets at hole 1 at the same time, 1 tee off time, no windows, tee off time. We all show up, randomly get paired off, shotgun start across, and then everyone comes back and changes. They do payouts every night for a year there, because they weren't tracking anything throughout the year, because there's 30, 40 guys. So you'd all pay in, and if you got in the top little bit, you'd get a little bit of money back. I actually wasn't super involved in EDGA for my first number of years playing, because I lived out in Spruce Grove, and I was like 18 at the time. That was a long drive for an 18-year-old.
Yeah.
I didn't want to do it. But yeah, at that point, there was only Rundle Park. There was Jubilee Park out in Spruce Grove. And there was Eagles Landing, which is out west a little bit. It is a fun course. Like I said, it's good. It just doesn't get a whole lot of love in Edmonton. And then Wetaskiwin was around. And the other one that was big for a long time there was a course called Middle Earth. It was a private course out west of the city as well, on the guy's property. And it was a great, fun place to go out and play doubles or whatever it was you joined for.
Nice.
Yeah. I've heard of Middle Earth, but I've never, it was obviously removed before we started playing. Did you ever play it, Jeremy?
No, I didn't play Middle Earth, but I think, Daryl, we took that picture there at Bailey's recently. We did that one video in front of that metal sculpture. That sculpture is from Middle Earth, isn't it, Gabe? Was it from there?
I don't actually think so. Nope.
Oh, okay.
Not that I've heard.
I don't know where I got that from.
Yeah, I didn't recognize it. I haven't heard that it's the one from Middle Earth, and I don't remember there being one like that out there. But Middle Earth was definitely a course of some homemade elements all throughout it. They were well known for, they had this massive basket. It's actually the basket that's now out at Wildman.
Right.
The big one on hole 18 used to be out at Middle Earth. They had another hole where it was a tonal with a keg. It was always known as the keg hole, and all kinds of different little things like that.
Well, Kristen is saying, no, it's not.
Oh, there we go. I've been called out, and that's okay. My research isn't always good. Sometimes I just assumed it looks like kind of like a knight holding some sort of weapon.
Yeah.
So I thought, oh yeah.
Like I said, I wouldn't have been surprised if it was from Middle Earth, but I was pretty sure it wasn't.
There you go.
I have some technical issues sometimes, Jeremy. Sometimes your research is wrong. It's all good. That's why we work so well together.
It is good. It's good. It shows people that we're human. We're not perfect podcasters. Nobody wants that, right?
Exactly. Be too polished.
Well, Gabe, when you were younger too, was there a lot of kids playing? I'm guessing not. Were you one of the few that was out there?
Yeah, I was really one of the only ones. I was often known as like the young kid that was playing, because there was not a whole lot of people playing, and I was 17, 18. Everyone else was in their 30 plus. I don't know, I was 17. Everyone looked old to me. But there was not a whole lot of people my age that were playing at that point, which was part of the reason that I didn't actually go very often to league. I'd usually go like 2, maybe 3 times a summer kind of thing, because it was a far drive, and then I'd show up and feel like I was younger than everybody and not know anybody, and I'd go home again. Um, so definitely a different culture and attitude now.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and at that time too, like you're starting out, you're learning. You've got, the youth pastor who had kind of helped and shown you the game. But like right now, we have so much information available to us. We can watch YouTube videos. We can get lessons from people. What were you doing to get better? Like how do you get better at a game that really didn't have a lot of information about it?
Yeah, that was definitely one of the toughest parts because not only was there very little online, I played 90% of my rounds, if not 95% of them, by myself out in Spruce Grove where nobody else was playing. So instead, I had to spend a very important chunk of my time, known as Math 30 in high school. I spent that time learning how to play disc golf. I was reading any forum I could find. I was trying to watch any video that I could find. But the reality is there just kind of wasn't much out there. And anything that was out there would then be contradicted by the next thing that I found. One thing would say, this is how you throw. Another one would say you need to swing your arm more. One would say you got to pull tight. So much of it was almost just more trial and error than anything else. Kind of taking what I was reading, taking what I was seeing online, trying to take bits and pieces of it, and then going and playing and playing and playing and seeing what it was actually giving me results. I'd go out and I'd play a whole round where I'm trying to swing my arm wide, see how it feels. And I'd go out the next time and I'd play a whole round trying to pull my arm tight and see how that feels. And that's what I was going off of more than anything else. It's one of the reasons that I really like doing the coaching clinics for EDGA and anything else like that, because it was one of my big frustrations when I started playing that I couldn't figure out how to play. I had this game I really wanted to play, but I didn't know how, and I didn't even know where to go. These days I try and help as much as I can.
Speaking of those early days, I'm always curious about this. Do you remember what discs, like where you got your first disc? Was it a starter set? And so which discs were you throwing? And do you still bag any of them? That's always my fun little question.
So the first couple of discs I got were from the guy who taught me how to play. I remember a couple of them, and then I remember buying 2 Discraft starter sets off of, what was it called? I think it was called discgolfcenter.com.
Okay.
It was an old website. So these 2 Discraft starter sets. I don't bag any of them. I bagged one of them for a little bit because I was trying to learn how to throw a roller. And so I had this, it's like a 150 baseline XL, which is already a flippy kind of 9-10 speed. And it was super beat up. And so I was trying to figure out how to throw rollers with it because I could throw it on a hyzer and still get a roller out of it. But other than that, not many of my early discs do I bag anymore. But
yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm always just curious if you still have them. Most of the time, people have said, nope, they're lost in a lake somewhere. They're too flippy. They've been disc swapped. Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah, I have some of them. Like that XL. I know I still have that. I know it's sitting somewhere over there.
Yeah.
Same with. Oh, it was a Comet. Was one of my the mid in that set. I know I still have that one because that was the one I got my first ace with. So it's got the little writing on the back of it. And
nice.
So I know I have 1 or 2 of them, but definitely a good chunk of them are gone.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's awesome to keep them around. And I wonder too, I got a couple of mine, but I think I got lucky. I picked a couple good discs by accident. I think it was because Gander only put good discs in their starter selection ones on the wall. So they were like, go over to the wall, pick out a putter, a mid, and a fairway, and you'll do good on that wall because it'll be better than just buying a pre-made set. And I ended up with a hex and a river, and it's like, how do you go wrong with that? Those will always be.
Yeah, those are great.
Yeah, they'll always be kept behind for sure. Now, Gabe, one of the things we want to focus on is that you learned when you were young, you've been involved with youth, you still work with youth. When it comes to disc golf, one of the things that we're talking about is if we want it to grow, we want to get more youth involved. Have you got any thoughts on why it appealed to you and then how we can make it appeal to other people?
Yeah, it appealed to me because I'd grown up playing sports all through growing up. Played mostly basketball, and then I stopped playing basketball when everybody else kept growing and I didn't. It was very mean of them. Um, but what appealed to me was that it was a sport that I could play and get better at without needing to always find people to be with and play with. Not needing the same, like if I want to go play a game of basketball, I got to go find what, 9 other people to go play with,
Yeah.
or five others if I want to go play 3-on-3 or something. And it was really nice that I could just kind of go whenever. It really helped if I needed to go clear my head or just didn't want to talk to people for a little while. I'd go put some headphones in, play disc golf, and do that for an hour or so. Um, so I think when it comes to getting youth into it, a lot of it is trying to figure out what are we pushing when it comes to disc golf? Like what are the outcomes? If we're always just saying, oh, you can come in place, you can play tournaments and you can do all this stuff, that's not always what everyone wants. Like I said, I
Right.
played one tournament a year for probably the first 2 or 3, and then I probably had about 3 or 4 years that I didn't play any tournaments at all. Um, so if we just kind of always push this, hey, if you're coming into disc golf, we have these tournaments, we have these events. Some people are going to love it. Some people aren't looking for that. Some people are just looking for people to hang out with and chuck frisbees in a park,
Yeah.
um, and just trying to find those places to get them involved. I definitely think one of the big struggles in Edmonton that I would see, and working with youth and being youth at some point, is kind of where our courses are placed. They're hard to get
Mm,
to. If you're 17 and you don't have a car to drive,
Right.
how am I getting to Rundle Park?
right.
Then the only advantage I had is that I started driving at 16 and I had a job. And so I had a car that I was driving. And so I was able to drive to Jubilee Park all the time. Whereas when I look at a lot of youth in Edmonton aren't getting a driver's license for till they're like 18, 19 or 20. And if they can't get to the course, they're not going to play.
Yeah.
And if the only way they can get to the course is they need to find a ride and find some buddies to go, well, now it's a whole lot tougher. And they may as well probably just go to, the Seville and go play volleyball with their friends kind of thing, because they
Right.
can at least transit there themselves. So definitely one of the big things that I always see with disc golf when I look at like, how do we get it to grow with youth is transportation. And it's one of the struggles I know City of Edmonton is talking about. I used to talk to them a little bit more about some stuff than I do currently, but I know they're really looking at how do they get more transit to Rundle Park and getting transit to Hermitage and like some of these other city parks, as they're slowly realizing that if you don't have a car to drive, how do you play disc golf? You can't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great point, and I wouldn't have
It
even
is.
thought of that, except for, Daryl, I'm thinking is when we go to Rundle League on a Thursday, and if we actually go down to the parking space, how long it takes to drive down there just to get there when you have a car. Could you imagine that the bus dropped you off at the top and you had to walk down to the course? Like,
Yeah.
no, that wouldn't work.
It's
Yeah.
it's
So
it's crazy because so many times people say, you ask that question, what do you need to get into disc golf? And my answer is always, just buy a starter set, get 3 discs. That's all you need. That's all you need to play. Not taking into consideration, oh yeah, you actually need to get to a course to actually play. You can't. I mean, you can practice in your backyard, you can practice putting or whatever, but to actually get out and play the sport like you want, you need transportation. You need to be able to get to a course.
yeah. And the only way that someone is going to get to the point of practicing in a field or going out of the way to buy a basket to go into their backyard is if they're playing enough and they're already bought in,
Yeah.
right? Like someone who's brand new to disc golf isn't going to go chuck discs in a field. They're going to want to go play a course for a year and go, okay, I love this enough that I'm willing to go throw in a field and do that. But you got to get them there first.
Yeah.
And the first step is literally getting people to the course.
Right. Yeah. And, I got a chance to go out to Ontario earlier this year. And when I was out there, I played a couple actual courses, like the well-known ones. But at the same time, I was looking for just anything nearby. And I found one course that was just 9 holes on a school property. And I think that would probably be one of those good ones to have, is because a lot of schools, especially somewhere like Spruce Grove, might have that large wooded area or park area that's not getting used. Putting a disc golf course out of there, even if there's only 3 or 4 holes, would be a great way to give ease of access and maybe get youth more involved.
Yeah, like when we look at the parks, especially here in Edmonton, that our courses exist in, they're in terrible places to get to without a car. Like we have the hills, which is so far south, and kind of
Don't
on the
knock the
edge.
south.
Not quite the south, you know. We have Norwester, which is in an industrial area that you have nothing else really nearby. And then you have Rundle and Hermitage, which most busing doesn't go down the long drive all the way in. They'll drop them off at the top. And then now I'm walking all the way down. Or you get dropped off in the neighborhood and walk your way down. But with both of them, and with all 4 of our courses, transit's terrible. You can't get there on a bus.
Yeah.
For sure. Well, I think we've already got it. So, Daryl, I know you're on the board. Can you please take this information and see what you guys can do? Maybe pass it to the appropriate people?
Yeah, I mean, I said to Tim before, we've had him on the podcast and we've asked him about what Edgar was doing then to get more youth into the sport. And you mentioned about, obviously, if you're young, you can't drive. You know, you don't always want to rely on people to take you to a course. So if you can't take them to the course, can you bring the course to them? And then when you mentioned about putting courses in schools, like even if it's only 1 or 2 baskets, if we can get 1 basket where people can play and throw, you know, and actually do a full distance throw, at least that way, you know, they're not getting them to the course, but you're getting the course to them. Maybe something along that lines will work.
Yeah, totally. Because the struggle with transit is not necessarily something that we as the disc golf community can make a huge impact on, right?
Right.
We aren't, I don't know about you, I'm not about to go get my bus license and start driving ETS. We can continue to advocate to the city that, hey, we need to try and find some transit routes down to Rundle Park or down to Hermitage or wherever it might be. Like I said, I also know that I was talking to some city people about a year ago, and at that point, they were already starting to talk about how do they get busing down to Rundle Park. And they're starting to work on it because they're realizing that Rundle is really well utilized by families that can drive, but they're seeing the struggle of it's underutilized by people that can't drive. And especially their ACT center, they're realizing is really underutilized by youth. And this was one of the big things that was brought up with their ACT center and going, why is it never used by youth? Because they can't get here.
They can't get there.
So they're working on it, but sadly, it's one of the things that we as a disc golf community can't do a huge thing about. What we can do is figure out how do we bring disc golf to them.
Yeah. So it used to be in the beginning, Jeremy, that if I didn't agree with something, I had a catchphrase for you. I think it's been pointed out that now we have a new phrase for Jeremy. After any conversation, it's, well, Daryl, take it back to the Edgar board.
Yes, that would be a good one. I think you might get tired of hearing me say that for sure.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of working with youth and bringing disc golf to them, one of the ways you've tried to bring it full circle, Gabe, is in your previous work, you were working with Youth Unlimited, and you've been putting on an annual fundraising disc golf tournament. And this year, Daryl and I were lucky enough to attend it. It was at Dog Rump Creek, which we will get to that because it's one of the interesting names. We had such a fun time. We got a chance to play the first round with you and Gavin and get a real learning of the course. We just want to talk about how you're putting together these tournaments and how you're finding ways to get disc golf to youth and kind of to help youth at the same time, I'm guessing as well.
Yeah. So for the last couple of years, I think I've run it 3 or 4 years now. I've run a fundraiser tournament for Youth Unlimited, like you said. Last couple of years before that, it was out at Spruce Grove. I ran at Jubilee Park. And I went through the effort of setting up 9 additional holes to add on. So we actually had 18 holes. But this year we had Dog Rump Creek Park open up as a new course. And not only do I think it's a great course, I'm also a little bit biased. As my dad was actually one of the main guys that was pushing it, actually the main guy. He was the person that was doing pretty much everything. So this course, he had this course that was opening up, and I went, hey, this would be a great place to run this. The city of Stony Plain is super excited about being able to host some of these tournaments and events. They have a great little setup for it with a nice space at the front to have your tables and your registration and all your courses nearby. So this year it got moved out to Dog Rump Creek, and it should hopefully be for the number of years following. And so that tournament will keep running. It's going to change charities as of this year. I have also changed charities that I work for. I still work with kids and youth, but just for a different charity at this point. So the tournament will feel pretty much the same, but the name will just be slightly different this year. So yeah, always one of my favorite things to do each year.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Daryl and I had so much fun at that event. Like, you guys put on a great lunch. We know we're helping a good cause. There's a lot of fun games. It's one of those ones that also shows, as you were saying before, you don't have to be competing for a rating every time you go to a tournament. There's other ways to participate in disc golf and still have a good time. And for us, that day was just as good as any other competitive tournament that we've been to. At least if I can speak for you on that, Daryl, do you feel the same way?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, we had a great time out there. It was for a great cause. You know, there was not a bad thing to say about the whole round. We got to play the first round with two of the people that are partly responsible for, you know, getting it all in, you and Gavin. You know, there's many other people out there that have, you know, cleared paths and taken away brush and everything else as well. You mentioned your dad was a big part of it. A lot of people, you know, you take a trip down the highway, you'll go to Calgary, wherever you might be going outside of the city, you'll drive by a piece of land and you'll look over and you'll think, you know, that would be a nice place to put a course. I could imagine it's nicely wooded. It's, you know, it's a bit of elevation change, but, you know, so for you to actually get out there and your dad to get out there and see the plot of land and try and get a course in there, like, what sort of some of the tips that you would maybe give to people if they see some land that maybe they want to put something on, like speaking to the city? How do they go about doing things like that?
Yeah, so it actually started from the fact that my dad has been working with. He was on, initially it was called Spruce Grove Disc Golf Association, and then it became Parkland Disc Golf Association, as Stoney approached the Spruce Grove Disc Golf Association and said, hey, there's a course out in Spruce Grove. We want one.
Right.
We want a course. So what is it going to take? And initially they basically approached my dad and said, here's a couple of pieces of land that we think could work for a course. Which one do you want? And so the one that he picked was, the Dog Rump Creek Park, hence the name Dog Rump Creek Course. Personally, I just always call it Rotary Park.
Right.
You know, kind of has both names. We'll go
Yeah.
with that one. But so when they first gave it to him, they gave him this piece of land and said, you know, here's kind of your boundaries. There's fences along the back that mark the property line. There's open space that's walking trails and has a big fountain, or not fountain, but a pond around it. And they said, you can't touch this stuff, but you get all the trees, and we'll do anything you want with those.
Wow.
So they even had a guy that offered to do all of the cutting for them as well. So it really helped with the cost. City of Stony Plain was absolutely incredible. I've heard stories from Tim over and over again about how much it can kind of be a pain at times to work with City of Edmonton.
Yeah.
Talking to my dad about both City of Spruce Grove, which was also a pain to work with. And there's a reason that there's still only 9 holes and not 18 holes. It's because they're still kind of a pain. But meanwhile, City of Stony Plain said, we want this in. What's it going to take? How do we get this done? I'll be honest, I still don't fully understand how he did all of it. Because I remember the first time walking the course with him, which was just a big bush. There's barely anything. And he's walking and he's like, yeah, like, don't you see there's like a fairway right here? That's literally just a wall of trees. There's nothing there. So even the one time we were out there and we're helping him, it was me, my dad, and my brother, and we're flagging off the trees to basically mark the fairway. And they were going to have a big mulcher and tree cutter come through and cut through everything else. And so I was struggling to even figure out which trees to mark. So I'm like, this is still just a big pile of, it's woods. There's not openings.
Yeah.
There's a couple of holes that play along some pathways. So those were easy, but there's a couple of big chunks that were just like, basically just bush. And so we're out there marking off the edges of fairways and saying, cut everything in between these 2 trees. I really think it's a great course. Like I said, I'm a little biased. I think it's fantastic. I really enjoy it because it's so different than everything we have in Edmonton. When I go play the course, I think I throw 1 disc that's a 7 speed, and everything else is 5 and under.
Right.
But I'm still not going out there thinking this is a pitch and putt. I'm going out there going, I need to hit my lines if I want birdies. And if I miss my line, I'm thinking about bogey or a double. But it's not just I'm going to go out there and rip drives as hard as I can. So I really
Yeah.
enjoy it.
I really like it. I've always said that it's a cross between, it's like an easier Wildman and Bailey's, but on a level elevation. Like if you've got,
Yeah.
if you're, I don't want to say accessibility is a problem, but if, walking Rundle can be a little bit strenuous to some people, Bailey's and Wildman has obviously got quite a bit of elevation change. But if you like that tight-wooded feeling, but on a level playing course, like I think Dog Rump is a great course.
Yeah. Especially when I talk to people and they're like, oh, how do I figure out how to hit gaps better?
Yeah.
Because you talk to a ton of guys in Edmonton and you never realize how different it is to hit exactly where you're going for if all you play is Rundle Park. And then they go and play some other course and realize that they don't know how to hit a gap.
Yeah.
And they come back and they're like, how do I do this? You just do it over and over and over again. And slowly you'll figure out your timing, your release point. And a course like Dog Rump is great for that because pretty much every single hole has a gap that you're trying to hit.
Yeah.
There's maybe one that I can think of off the top of my head that I'm not thinking about a gap within 50 feet of where I'm throwing. So you need to hit your lines and you're going to be punished otherwise.
And it should be said that it's either a lefty course or a forehand friendly course. There's quite a few holes that Gabe kind of sets up and he's like, oh yeah, it's just a easy little forehand hyzer around the corner. And me and Jeremy are thinking, okay, what's my flippiest backhand turnover that I can get to go around this hole? Because we don't have, well, you've got a better forehand than me, but and that's a good thing as well. If you don't have a forehand, if you got out to Dog Rump, then you're going to learn how to throw backhand turnovers or work on that forehand game.
Yeah. And see, that's the thing. I think that thinking through the holes, I think it honestly might be pretty close to 50-50 are what you'd call lefty or forehand holes.
Right.
The big difference is that those that are a lefty or a forehand hole are really, really tough with the backhand.
Yeah.
Whereas when you think about some of the holes at other courses, even if they are that left to right moving shot, usually you'll still have enough space that you can turn something and have that big swooping anhyzer. So it doesn't feel like it has to be that forehand. Whereas some of the lines out at Dog Rump are that left to right shot, but they're tight. And the way you're going to hit it is that forehand that dumps. So there's not quite the same level of it has to be, or it can be anything. Kind of has to be that forehand shot.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of the ones you can get away with that flippy backhand.
Yeah. No, and that's good. And I think, again, like you said, is you could go out there, you can practice all these shots, and you're not going to throw your arm out doing it, right? You're not trying to throw these big bombs. So I can't wait to get out there for that again. But another question for you about it is that if the city is so supportive, which is awesome to see, and I know it's a brand new course and a lot has already been done, are we going to be able to expect more to happen and more to develop? Are they talking about tee pads? Are they talking about more clearing or anything like that?
Yeah, so clearing is probably going to stay about where it is now, but now they're maintaining it. The struggle at first was the city didn't really know what we were even wanting it to look like because they're like, what does the course look like other than Jubilee Park or Rundle Park?
Right.
So as it kind of got tamped down, and especially leading up to my tournament this year, like I said, my dad and Gavin were out there and myself were out there weed whacking, chainsawing stuff down. And so as it slowly gets cut back to where we want it to be, it's a lot easier to then look at the city and say, hey, just keep it like this.
Yeah.
See how it looks now? This is how we want it to look. Whereas before we're trying to describe it. But when it comes to tee pads and tee signs is the other big question often. Those are both hopefully coming early spring. The one thing that we're trying to figure out with the city right now is out at Dog Rump, there's two sets of tees. There's red tees and blue tees. And the blue tees are tough. They're not easy. I'm pretty excited if I get out there with, a 2 or 3 under par. So what they're trying to figure out right now is when they first put in tee pads, are they putting in the blue tees or the red tees?
Right.
Especially because there's a little bit of pushback right now from the city on whether they think it's going to be worth it right away to put in both. They don't want to put in both right away.
Right.
So one of the questions is, do red tees going first or blue tees going first? And then with that, like I said, tee signs will also come. But all of the little things you don't think about until I'm talking to, my dad who's putting this course in, is with tee signs is the city really only wants to put in one tee sign per hole,
Right.
which normally isn't a big deal until you have two different tee pads.
Yeah.
And that's fine if the difference between your blue tee and your red tee is 30 feet of distance or 50 feet of distance, right? On a straight line.
Yeah.
You just kind of put it at the back tee because you're going to walk past it to get to your short tee. But there's a few holes out at Dog Rump that your red tee is in a totally different place from your blue tee because your blue tee is a blind corner shot and your red tee is a straight shot with a little bit of turn because it's all the way around the corner. So if you only get to put one tee sign in, where do you put your one tee sign?
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's an interesting thing I wouldn't have thought of. But another thing I would
figure it out.
Yeah. And like when you look at a place like the Hills where it had two tee pads, or it does have two tee pads, but there's not really a big difference between them, maybe, and I know this is a way out there idea, is take a look at the course and say, what would be that kind of nice middle range setup where sometimes you play the red, sometimes you play the blue, but you don't feel like you got completely beat up if you're a brand new player and you felt like you got a challenge. And maybe that's the set of tee pads that go in first in case that's the only set of tee pads that goes in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So like I said, it's one of the little things as we work with cities and help them understand that tee signs are really important and tee pads are really important. One of the biggest things that we heard coming out of my event this year was, man, this course will be so much better once tee pads go in. And then the hard piece is, as you look at that, what tee pads go first? Is it reds or blues? Because as someone who says, I want to run an event out here, there's a high chance I'm going to run an event on blues.
Right.
But are the majority of people that go play that course going to play blues? Or are they going to play reds? But at the same time, are the people who complain about tee pads, are those going to be the people that play red tees or blue tees?
Yeah. I guess you could maybe you could look at the UDIS data, right? If you've, I don't know, how old is the course? Is that over a year old yet?
No.
So you probably haven't got a lot of.
Yeah, it officially opened this summer, and then it had to close for a little bit as we were figuring out course maintenance with the city. We opened it up, and then the city went, great, you guys go cut everything, all the grass. And we went, oh, that wasn't the deal.
Yeah.
So yeah, not open for honestly maybe 4 months this summer. Maybe 3.
Yeah. Because we were one of the first ones out there to play the actual tournament, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. Well, Daryl, I want to go out there now. As soon as the snow's tamped down a bit, we'll let Gabe go out and play a few more rounds out there. Maybe we'll get him out there, and then we can, or maybe that's how we'll get him out in the winter because we know he loves it there. So then all of us can go out and play around out there in the winter. See how that goes. Well, Gabe, you talked earlier. You know what, Daryl, what's really awesome with these interview ones, and we're going to let everyone know, this one's going to go a little bit longer, and I'm okay with that. And we'll just push our ATB just a little bit later. But one of the things you said when you were starting out, you kind of were out there and you were throwing and you were throwing and you were kind of throwing the big wide arm and then you were throwing the close tight one, trying to figure out the way to do it. Now, you've learned all those things. And one of the things that I don't know if a lot of people know is that you're doing lessons both with Edga, as you mentioned earlier in the winter clinics, or you have in the past, and you also do lessons on your own. So I've had a chance of both the last 2 years to go and do your indoor lessons. Are you going to be doing them again this year?
Yeah. So they'll be back again this year. They'll be February and March again. This year it'll be 8 weeks instead of 10, but that was because we had 2 weeks in there last year that we tried to do as more advanced weeks and just didn't really see a ton of interest in them. So this year it'll be 2 4-week camps, 4 weeks in February, 4 weeks in March. And we'll be back.
Awesome. Now, Daryl hasn't had a chance to come to these, but I really want to, I do want to promote it to everybody because I've done it the last 2 years. And you do start at a very basic spot a lot of times because we do have a lot of brand new players come out. But I'll tell you that every time it's all things that I need to hear. And I need to hear them over and over and over again. Because unless you're going out to Dog Rump Creek, for example, and hitting your line 8 out of 10 times, you need to focus on the things that you're going to teach us. And you get to do it in an indoor area, no wind. It's warm. It's the winter time, and you don't have a jacket on. Like, you've got your free motion, and then plus you and sometimes Tristan and everybody are coming along and giving points and tips as well. So not only is it just a group lesson, you're giving us a opportunity to get an individualized tip here and there as well. So that's my promo.
So, yeah, typically the structure I've done for the last couple of years is with these 4 weeks ones is I'll spend the first 2 weeks on backhand. Typically the first night is all upper body backhand, and then the second night is all lower body backhand. And then the third night is all forehands. And the fourth night, I'll typically leave actually up for what people want. I'll usually ask at the end of the third week and say, hey, do you have some questions that you want answered? Is there anything that you guys go, I don't know how to do this? Let me know. I'll take a couple of them, and that's what I'll teach on next week. So last year, one of the questions that a couple people asked is, how do you throw a patent pending shot? Which, if you don't know, is where you're stretched out with your left foot at your disc and your right foot kind of reaching out, trying to scramble out a backhand. And that was a question from a few people is, I always try it and I feel like I always screwed up. So we spent part of the night on the fourth night talking about patent pending throws. Yeah. And then as we go through those, I'll give some big group lessons. And then we have people throw back and forth on this field a few times while I get to walk around and kind of work with people one-on-one as we go and go, hey, Jeremy, here's what I'm seeing in you as you're trying this out. Try and tweak this one little thing here. Or, hey, you got your foot there. Let's just try moving it a little bit more and see how that goes for you. So I always enjoy it. It's always one of my highlights. I'll keep saying yes to it until Edgar stops asking me to do it. So,
all right, Daryl, awesome. Bring that back to the board, okay?
I'll bring that board. Yeah, I can account for that firsthand because back at that tournament at Dog Rump, I was doing patent pending, and it wasn't until you said something to me. You said it after I did my throw, but the way that I was treating patent pending was more of a straddle putt. Like I would put my right foot on the disc, stretch out with my left foot, and then kind of pull across my body. And you kind of said to me, maybe next time when you do that, maybe just consider switching your feet. And then I tried it, and I was like, oh, I could get more range of motion with my arm here. That's amazing. So, yeah, I can testify that you told, patent pending from Gabe actually works.
I always struggle when I play rounds with people that I don't know very well and trying to figure out, like, hey, you're doing stuff wrong, but how much do I tell you that you're doing wrong? But by far the most common thing that I will tell people is swap their feet in patent pending. It's like one of the fastest, simplest things. And every time I'll do exactly what I did for you is I'll let you throw your shot because I don't want to be in your head. Right. I don't want you to be thinking about it. I'll let you throw your shot. And afterwards I'll go, hey, try this next time. To just swap your feet. Like you said, your range of motion is going to feel a whole lot better. You're also going to be able to reach out further. It's going to feel so much more natural, man. Yeah. So that's always one of my things that if I ever see people doing it, I'll always just kind of bring it up a little bit. Outside of that, I kind of bite my tongue as I play with people and go, hey, if you want to know more, let me know and we can do a lesson.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, you'll know I'll be there again, definitely, Gabe, because I loved it. But the other thing, too, that you're offering is you do lessons on an individual basis, and I took advantage of that this year as well. Daryl might not notice that, so we might have to do a couple more of them. But I did want you to kind of let people know, because I don't know if everyone out there who plays disc golf knows that you do individual lessons and that there is somebody who can actually help you get better. You don't just have to keep throwing it until you figure it out, because Gabe's already done that and he can show you how in a lot shorter amount of time.
Yeah, so I've done some individual lessons for probably the last 3 or 4 years now, varying degrees of amounts, as it's kind of one of those weird things to promote yourself on, to walk around and go, hey, I can tell you how to throw a Frisbee better. Trust me on this. To be honest, the more that I play and the better that I get, it's actually an easier sales pitch. As I get to go out and say, hey, I'm an MPO player. I can throw this far. This is my rating. Promise I can help you throw a little bit better. So I've done lessons on so many different things. I've had people come that want to do just backhands. I've had people that want to do just forehands. I actually did one lesson with a guy where I didn't talk about his form at all. What I did is I played an entire round with him at Rundle and just talked about decision making, because this
Right.
guy went, I feel like I'm going to lose strokes. And to be honest with you, a lot of amateur players lose strokes almost as much on decisions as they do on bad form and bad throws. A lot of the time, your bad throw is then made worse by it was a bad choice to throw the shot in the first place.
Yeah.
So yeah, I did a full lesson where I just played around with him, and as he got up to every shot, he said, "Hey, so here's what I'm thinking. What do you think?" And so I'd walk him through. Okay, well, if you're throwing onto a slope, if you're trying to throw this putt, you want it to get to stick close. We want to make sure that we're landing our putt as flat on that hill as we can. Because if you're landing your upshot on a huge hyzer spike, it's a higher chance you're going to bounce up and you're going to roll away. Yeah, I've done all kinds of things. Like I said, I promote it a little bit here and there. I'll always talk about it when I do these group lessons, because I'll often have a couple people come out of it and say, "Hey, it's been great getting to know you and hearing what you got to say. Can we do some more out of this?" So even last year, I actually did a whole bunch of lessons out in Drayton Valley as well, because one of the main guys, Curtis, came and did some of the indoor coaching ones. And so he set up a day out in Drayton Valley. I drove out and I did lessons for, I think, like 5 hours that day to a whole bunch of different people out in Drayton Valley to try and bring it to them. So, yeah, one of the things I always do.
It totally makes a lot of sense, because, as we always say, for us people that go out and actually keep track of our scores, player 2 is always 1100 rated, right? And I don't think it's anything to do with the fact that you throw a better shot on the second player. It's that you throw that other shot that you should have thrown. You throw the shot, it doesn't go where you want. You know what I should have done? I should have threw this. And then it's always the better shot, right? Because, like you said, it's that decision making. I'm sure we're not going to give that out right here on the chat, but we do have a question. Matt wants to know how much for private lessons. Rather than saying how much it is for private lessons, how would somebody be able to get in contact with you? And then you can discuss that with them on a one-on-one basis. Unless you want to say, it was up to you. But I think if people get in contact with you, that's the best way.
Yeah, the best way they can do it is either message me on Facebook, or I also have a email that I can throw into the chat as well, to try and help people get times figured out and whatnot. Because, again, the prices do kind of change a little bit, typically depending on what the person is looking for. I'll have someone, like I said, that says, "Hey, I just want a little backhand lesson." And we'll do half an hour on backhand. I've had some people that say, "Hey, I don't want to do a lesson, but can I just send you a video and you just send me some thoughts over messaging back?" And so that I'll price it a little bit lower for that. Or, "Hey, if you want to go play a full round with me, then that just takes a little bit longer."
Right.
Right.
So yeah, it ranges depending on what the person is looking for. But like I said, message me on Facebook. I'm in all of the Edga pages and whatnot. You can message me on Instagram if you want. Gabe.Piska, nice and easy. Keep it simple. Or, like I said, I'll type the email in here as well. You can send something off to, and we can figure something out.
Perfect.
Well, I think the one thing that we've learned is that if you're out there playing on your own and it's just not going well, and you feel like you're on an island all by yourself, you're not, right, Daryl? There's help out there for you. But if you were on an island...
But if you were on an island, Gabe...
Now it's time for Desert Island Discs. Picture this. You've taken a relaxing cruise, however the ship goes down. You manage to swim to an island, and fortunately for you, there's an 18-hole disc golf course. Which 3 discs are you taking with you on the island?
There you go. You've seen the show before. You know this was coming. If you can only take 3 discs with you. And you can come up with any type of course on this island. You can be a 9-hole, 18-hole, whatever you like. Which 3 discs are you taking with you?
So I was thinking about it before. This is one that I had to think about a little bit. I'm pretty sure the 3, like I said, not set. Pretty sure it'd be a Wrath from Axiom.
Okay.
One of my recent favorites. I've fallen in love with it in the last probably 2 years, year and a half.
I've heard of the Wrath, but I've never seen one. Never seen anyone throw one. So what type of disc is it?
Yeah, so I think the numbers on it are a 9.5 minus 0.5, 1 or 2.
Okay.
It's kind of like a slightly straighter overstable 9 speed, kind of like that Thunderbird or like an Athena that goes a little bit further. I really like it because it's super flat. It's got a ton of push out of it. It'll still kind of hook back for me, but if I want to put it on some Anheuser, I can get it to hold pretty much the whole way.
Right.
So to be honest, that was the one that I was least sure of. It would either be that or an FD. Couldn't decide. And then I'd bring a Pyro, would be my mid kind of stable disc all the time. I can throw it backhand, forehand, shape it all the time. I love it. And then the putter is actually, I was thinking about it, and it's actually a disc that I don't currently even have in my bag. But if I had to go down to three discs, the last one would be a P3X.
Right.
Now, the reason I don't have it in my bag is that I find that the P3X does a little bit of everything, but it doesn't quite do anything as good as I'd want it to. So when I carry a full bag of discs, I carry like kind of two discs because the P3X is stable, but not really. Whereas instead I'll just carry like a slightly stable putt and approach, and then I'll carry a straight to slightly understable putt and approach. So those would be my three: a Wrath, a Pyro, and a P3X.
No Innova, but we can get to that another day.
Yeah, I was going to say, as an MVP Axiom fan, I've got two more discs to try, hey?
See, Daryl, I will tell you, this is, for another day. Maybe if you guys invite me back, I'll tell you why I don't love Innova. But pretty much all the P3Xs that I've thrown and really loved were Innova made P3Xs. So I'll at least give you that.
Okay. That's about as close as we'll get, but I'll take it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, Gabe, that kind of brings us to the end of the interview there, but we want to make sure to give you an opportunity. Is there anything that you wanted to shout out at all before we let you go?
Not really. You guys covered a lot of it. You guys, I don't know if people that watch the show know, but Jeremy and Daryl send basically discussion points ahead of time so that, people aren't completely on their toes. And my couple of things I wanted to talk about were suddenly on all of the discussion points that they'd already sent. It's like they read my mind. So yeah, I appreciate you guys having me on. I love, like I said, a couple of ones I wanted to talk about was these EDGA lessons because I love them. I love doing them. I think they're fantastic. I think that we as a sport need to continue to find ways to teach people how to play. It was actually Curtis, the guy from Drayton Valley, when he brought me out to Drayton, he said that Curtis is basically like the father of disc golf in Drayton Valley. He's done all of it. And he said that his couple big things, he said, I need to put courses in the ground so people can play. I need to bring discs in so people can get the discs to play. But we also need to teach them how to play. Because if we bring the courses and if we bring the discs, but we never teach them how to play, then what good is the discs and the courses? So I'm a huge advocate for continuing to teach people how to play as much as we can. I remember being frustrated trying to figure it out. I don't want people to have that. Especially because there's no need to anymore. And then I want to give a huge shout out to my dad, Mike Piska, for putting in Dog Rump Creek. He's put so many hours into that course. I encourage you guys to go play that course, give it great ratings. Especially once the snow melts, you get out there, go play. Don't expect Rundle Park when you show up, and enjoy it for the fact that it's not Rundle Park. And that's why I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure. Nice. Well, that's awesome. Thank you so much, Gabe. We appreciate it. You're welcome on any time, and you've already established your spot as a guest host. You've nailed that the last time you did it, so we're sure you're going to be back on again. Hey, Daryl?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I haven't missed an episode yet, so the chances are you're filling in for Jeremy again.
Yeah, like I said, I loved it.
True. I'm not going to argue. Great. Well, thanks, Gabe. All the best, man, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yes, thank you so much. Hopefully I'll see both you guys at indoor lessons this year. And if anyone wants to come help out with, putting tee pads in, like just got sent in the chat there. If you want to help put tee pads in the spring, we'll be looking for help.
There you go.
And hopefully I'll see a bunch of you guys out at indoor lessons this year. Keep an eye on EDGA Communications. You're the communications guy.
There you go. If it's happening, it'll be in the newsletter.
Yeah, he'll be
Yeah,
sending it out to you guys.
absolutely.
So hopefully I'll see you guys there.
Awesome. Thanks, Gabe. Thanks for your time.
Yes, thank you so much, guys.
Thanks.
Awesome. Daryl, getting Gabe on finally, hey, for the interview, it delivered just the way I wanted it to. He's such a great guy to talk to.
Oh yeah, and he knows his things. He knows his stuff. He's doing everything for the right reasons. And yeah, I couldn't imagine being in a fairway in a group of trees saying we're going to cut these trees down and not being able to see the fairway and thinking, are these the right trees? Because once you cut them down, you're done. But obviously Mike had a vision, and Gabe, went through with it, and they cut it all down. And Dog Rump Creek is a great course. It's like I said before, it's like a flat Bailey's or a flat Wildman. It's tight, it's challenging, but it's without the elevation. So it's definitely a course you want to play if you're used to Rundle and Hermitage. It's definitely a different change of pace for that, for sure.
Yeah, that's right. And at this point here, we're kind of towards the end of our episode. And the one thing we want to tell everybody is, first of all, thank you for listening.
Absolutely.
We love it when you listen. We love it even more when you subscribe, when you like, when you follow, when you put comments in there. If you're not following by this point, come on, we're on episode 54. What are you doing here? Subscribe on YouTube, right, Daryl?
Yeah, or follow us. Chain Out Podcast
something.
everywhere except for Insta. Do something. Except for Instagram, Chain Out _podcast. If you're not doing any of that, leave a comment on the video. That helps us.
Yeah, and if that's not enough for you and you want to know how do I do more, check out the Patreon. It's free right now. Buy us a beer. Check out our link tree. There's so many odd ways you can help support us. So
absolutely. We said it was free for 3 weeks.
It's still free. I'm going longer, man.
It's still free, but we don't want to cheat the people that actually support us.
No,
we want to make sure that they're supporting us for a reason. So maybe this will be the last week it's free, but I don't know, depending on what Jeremy says.
And speaking about the Patreon members, we got a couple new ones that have joined as Chainlink members that we wanted to shout out, and that's Dina Dies Discs, and then
Dinah?
Or Dinah. Could be Dinah Dies Discs. I think it depends which side of the pond you're from. And then, of course, Dylan Froelich is also a member as well now. So thank you to both of you. And one of the things about Dina is that her discs are available on Disc Republic's website. And I checked them out, and there's some couple cool ones in there. Or not couple, there's a ton of cool ones in there. But what I was going to tell you is some of them are actually Innova, and some of them are MVP. So, you saw? You looked? Okay.
I've looked. I've seen them on there. Yeah, they're really nice. Yeah.
So I think before long, I'm probably going to find one of those discs in my bag too. So thank you definitely for supporting us there. Now, Daryl, we usually say we're going to start the Around the Basket about 8:15.
I know. We had a little bit of hiccup with the technical issues in the beginning, so that pushed us a little bit late. But we need to wrap this up because we need to give the people what they want.
That's right. So what we're going to do is we said 8:15, but we're going to give ourselves probably about a 5 to 10 minute quick little break to refresh our beverage.
Yeah.
And Mr. Tim Plamondon is going to be on with us.
He's been waiting patiently.
Check out the link. I've already messaged him. He says, no worries, man. Don't worry about it. I'm watching this as you guys talk. So
there must be no hockey on tonight then. That's okay. He's cool. He's fine.
There you go. So we'll get to him. But before we get to him, we got to finish this episode off the best way we know how. Right? Is that where we're at? Did I miss anything? Do I got everything?
I don't know. I'm just quickly scrolling through.
All right. Take a look.
Okay. Okay. You say what you're going to say because I don't know where we are. I know where we are at the end of this. But what are you trying to say? What's the best way? The only way we know how.
All right. Well, what I'm going to say is this. I'm going to say, join us on Around the Basket. We're going to talk to Tim Plamondon. We're going to have an exclusive Patreon member giveaway item.
Yes.
We're going to talk about how we can grow disc golf. We're going to talk about playoff formats. I got some opinions on that. Maybe getting bigger sponsors in disc golf. We'll see where it takes us. I want these to be fun. Like you said, these are going to be real good and conversational. So we're going to get there. But to get there, we got to get out of here.
Exactly.
How are we going to get out of here?
There's only one way we can get out of here, Jamie. Jeremy, that's your name. There's only one thing left to do.
That's right. We need to say,
Cheerio! Thanks, everybody. We got there in the end.